Ambassador Alara Chen walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber for what she knew would be the last time. Her footsteps echoed against the polished floor made from crystals found only on the oldest worlds. Around her, representatives from over 200 species watched her approach the central platform. Some looked at her with curiosity. Others looked at her with something close to pity. A few did not bother to hide their amusement. She had been doing this for 20 years. Before her, other human ambassadors had done the same thing for nearly 3 centuries. They came to this chamber with hope in their hearts. They spoke of cooperation and friendship. They offered everything humanity had to give. And every single time, the answer was the same. Not yet. You are too young. Perhaps in another century, today was supposed to be different. Today, the Council was voting on whether to finally give humanity a permanent seat among the great powers of the galaxy. Alara had spent months preparing her case. She had documents showing every contribution humans had made. The diseases they had cured. The wars they had helped end. The technology they had shared without asking for anything in return. The High Minister of the Vrelian Concordat rose from his floating throne. His purple skin shimmered under the chamber lights. His 4 eyes looked down at Alara with an expression she had learned to recognize over the years. It was the look of someone who had already made up their mind. "We have reviewed the application from the Human Coalition," he said. His voice was smooth and practiced. "While we recognize certain contributions made by the human species, we find that they remain too young, too emotional, and too unpredictable to hold a permanent position of power within this council." Alara felt nothing. She had expected this. She had prepared for this. The vote stands at 147 against, 31 in favor, and 22 abstentions. The High Minister continued. "The application is denied. Humanity may reapply in 100 standard years." The Korthon delegation, massive beings covered in gray scales, made sounds that Alara knew were laughter. The ancient Thessari elders, who had lived for thousands of years and remembered when humans still lived in caves, did not even look at her. They were already talking among themselves about other matters. Alara stood in silence for a long moment. She thought about all the humans who had stood in this exact spot before her. She thought about the hope they had carried and the disappointment they had taken home. She thought about the colonies that had been attacked while the Council debated whether humans deserved protection. She thought about the children who had died on Kepler 4 for 2b. While these same representatives offered nothing but hollow words, something had changed inside her. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder and more final. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. It was the diplomatic credential that marked her as Earth's official representative to the Galactic Council. She had carried it for 20 years. It had been passed down through generations of ambassadors, each one adding their hope to its weight. Alara placed it gently on the crystalline floor. "Very well," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We wish you all luck." Then she turned and walked toward the exit. The chamber fell silent. This was not how species responded to rejection. They argued, they pleaded, they demanded reconsideration. They did not simply leave. Ambassador Chen, the High Minister, called out. There was confusion in his voice. "You may speak in protest if you wish. That is your right under council law." Alara did not stop walking. "There is nothing more to say. Surely you understand that this decision is not personal," the High Minister continued. "Your species has great potential. In time, you will earn your place among us." Alara reached the doors. She paused and looked back at the chamber one final time. 200 species looked back at her. Some were confused. Some were curious. A few were beginning to feel something they could not quite name. Something that felt almost like worry. "Humanity has spent 300 years proving itself to this council," Alara said. "We have given freely. We have asked for nothing but respect in return. And for 300 years you have told us we are not good enough." She smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the Korthon delegates stop laughing. "We have decided to stop asking." She walked out of the chamber, and the doors closed behind her. Within 1 hour, every human diplomatic mission across the galaxy received the same message. It was short. It was simple. It was signed by the leaders of every human nation and colony. The message said, "Come home," on the Varelian homeworld. Human doctors who had been treating a plague packed their equipment and boarded their ships. On the Korthon border, human peacekeepers who had been preventing a war for 15 years handed over their posts to confused local forces. On 100 different worlds, human scientists, engineers, teachers, and aid workers stopped what they were doing, said polite goodbyes, and left. The galaxy had never paid much attention to what humans actually did. They were just there in the background, solving problems and helping out. Nobody had ever stopped to count how many humans were doing how many things in how many places. Within 48 hours, humanity had completely withdrawn from galactic space. Their ships retreated beyond the borders of the Sol system. Their communication channels went silent. Their emergency frequencies, which had been open to anyone who needed help for 3 centuries, broadcast a single final message. This channel is no longer monitored. We wish you well. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting to discuss what had happened. Most representatives were not worried. The Varelian High Minister assured everyone that humans would come back once they calmed down. They were an emotional species, after all. This was probably some kind of protest that would end in a few weeks. The Thessari elders said nothing. They were the oldest species in the galaxy, and they had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had seen what happened when someone who gave everything was pushed too far. But they kept their thoughts to themselves. Weeks passed. Months passed. The humans did not come back, and slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to notice the silence they had left behind. It was a silence that grew louder with each passing day. A silence that would soon become impossible to ignore. The universe was about to learn an important lesson. There is a difference between needing someone and valuing them. And by the time that lesson was understood, it might already be too late, 3 months after the humans left. The first reports of the Mandari plague began spreading across the communication networks. It started on a small moon in the outer territories, a place nobody important cared about. Within weeks, it had jumped to 3 more systems. Dr. Thiessen of the Varelian Medical Authority stared at the data on his screen with growing horror. He knew this disease. Everyone in the medical field knew it. It had appeared 50 years ago and threatened to wipe out entire UZO populations before it was contained. The cure had come from human researchers. They had worked for 2 years without sleep, shared their findings freely, and asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. The Varelian government had taken the cure, mass-produced it, and never once publicly thanked the humans who had created it. Now, the plague was back. It had mutated into something new. Thiessen reached for his communication device to contact the human medical teams stationed on the border worlds. His hand stopped halfway. There were no human medical teams anymore. They had all gone home. He tried to find the original research data, hoping his own scientists could modify the cure, but the files were incomplete. The humans had done most of the work in their own laboratories, sharing only the finished product. Nobody had thought to ask for the underlying research. Nobody had thought they would ever need it. Thiessen sent an urgent request to Earth. The response came 3 days later, written in perfect diplomatic language that somehow made the message even more painful. The Human Coalition thanks the Varelian Concordat for reaching out. Unfortunately, we are no longer providing medical assistance to non-allied species. We recommend consulting your own research institutions. We wish you well across the galaxy. Similar scenes were playing out in different ways. The Korthan Empire had the largest communication network in known space. It connected hundreds of worlds and allowed instant contact across impossible distances. For the past century, it had been maintained by human engineers who worked in the background, fixing problems before anyone noticed them. The Korthons had never paid much attention to these engineers. They were just humans, after all. Useful, but unimportant. Now the network was failing. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were crashing without warning. The Korthon engineers tried to fix the problems, but they quickly discovered that the network was far more complex than they had realized. The humans had not just maintained it. They had improved it, upgraded it. and rebuilt entire sections without ever telling anyone, the Korthon High Command sent a message to Earth requesting technical assistance. The response was polite and brief. We wish you well. Trade routes that had been safe for generations suddenly became dangerous. Nobody had paid much attention to the small human patrol ships that moved quietly through certain areas of space. They were just volunteers, people said. Humans who wanted to help? They did not ask for payment or recognition. They simply kept the shipping lanes clear of pirates and raiders. The pirates noticed when the patrols stopped. Within 6 weeks, 3 major trade convoys had been destroyed. Insurance costs increased by 400%. Several shipping companies went bankrupt. The Galactic Council held meeting after meeting, trying to address the growing problems. But the council was built on centuries of tradition and slow debate. Every decision required votes from dozens of committees. Every action needed approval from species who could not agree on anything. The humans had never worked that way. When they saw a problem, they fixed it. When they saw someone in need, they helped. They did not wait for permission or form committees. They just acted. Ambassador Vex of the Thesauri's elders watched the chaos with ancient eyes. He had lived for 6,000 years and had seen many things. He remembered when humans first appeared on the galactic stage, young and eager and full of strange emotions. He remembered how other species had laughed at their enthusiasm, their need to help everyone, their inability to simply mind their own business. He had laughed too. Back then, now he sat in his private chambers and reviewed reports from across the galaxy. A border conflict that humans had been mediating for 20 years had exploded into open war. A refugee crisis that human aid organizations had been managing had become a humanitarian disaster. A research project that human scientists had been leading had collapsed without their expertise. For the first time in centuries, Varax felt something he had almost forgotten how to feel. He felt afraid. He requested a private audience with the Vrelian High Minister, the same official who had denied humanity's council application 3 months ago. We must reach out to the humans, Vrex said. We must apologize and ask them to return. The High Minister's 4 eyes narrowed. Apologize. The Vrelian Concordat does not apologize to lesser species. Lesser species? Vrex let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it had any humor in it. Look around you, Minister. Look at what is happening to our galaxy. The humans were never lesser. We simply refused to see what they truly were. And what were they? Vrex was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with regret. They were the ones holding everything together. They were the ones who did the work nobody else wanted to do. They were the ones who cared when nobody else did. He looked at the High Minister with something close to pity. And we treated them like servants. We took everything they gave and offered them nothing but contempt. The High Minister shifted uncomfortably. They will come back. They are an emotional species. They cannot stay angry forever. That is what worries me, Vrex replied. I have studied humans for a very long time. They are emotional, yes. They feel things deeply. But there is one thing that many species fail to understand about them. He leaned forward. When a human finally stops caring, when they finally give up on someone, they do not come back. Not ever. The High Minister said nothing. We had 300 years of their patience, Vrex continued. 300 years of their hope, and we wasted every single moment. He stood slowly, his ancient body feeling heavier than usual. Now we will learn what the universe looks like without them, and I fear that lesson will be more painful than any of us can imagine. It was right. The lesson was coming, and the universe was not ready for it. Captain Yellen Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the observation ship, vigilant, and watched a world die, the Thazari homeworld. One of the oldest inhabited planets in the galaxy was burning. Not from human weapons. Humanity had not fired a single shot since the withdrawal. The destruction came from the Keth Swarm, an ancient enemy that had slept for thousands of years in the dark. Spaces between stars. The Thesari had believed the Keth were gone forever. They had believed wrong. Yellen's crew stood at their stations in complete silence. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Others gripped their controls so tightly that their knuckles turned white. Every person on that ship wanted to do something. Every person wanted to help. They could not. Their orders were clear. Observe, record. Do not engage. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb stood beside Yellen, his face carefully blank. He had served with her for 15 years. She could tell he was struggling. "Captain," he said quietly, "we have the firepower to make a difference. Our shields could protect the evacuation ships. Our weapons could what?" Yellen interrupted. Her voice was not angry. It was tired. "Could save them today? And then what happens tomorrow? And the day after? And the day after that?" Marcus had no answer. Yellen turned to look at him. "We saved them before, Marcus. Do you remember the Theta Cygni incident? We lost 200 human soldiers protecting the Sari colonies from raiders. Do you know what the Thessary Council said when we asked for help recovering our dead?" Marcus shook his head, said our dead were not their concern. They said we had chosen to interfere, and the consequences were our own responsibility. Yellen looked back at the view screen, at the burning world. They sent us a bill for the fuel our rescue ships used. The bridge fell silent. On the planet below, millions of the Sari were dying. Their ancient cities, built over countless centuries, were crumbling to dust. Their famous libraries, holding knowledge from before most species had developed language, were burning, and the Vigilant watched in her quarters later that night. Yellen sat alone with a glass of water and a photograph. The photograph showed a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with dark hair and a bright smile. She was standing in front of a building that no longer existed. The girl was Yellen's daughter. The building had been a school on Kepler-44b 15 years ago. When that colony was attacked, the Galactic Council had debated for 3 weeks about whether to send help. They discussed legal frameworks and jurisdictional issues and the proper procedures for emergency response. By the time they finished debating, the colony was gone. 4,000 people dead, including 200 children, the Council's. Official response had been a formal statement expressing regret at the unfortunate situation and hope for a peaceful resolution. The Len had memorized those words. She would never forget them. When Earth announced the withdrawal, some humans protested. They said it was wrong to abandon the galaxy just because the galaxy had treated them badly. They said humans should be better than that. They said compassion should not have conditions. Yellen understood their argument. Part of her even agreed with it, but she also understood something that the protesters did not. Compassion without boundaries was not compassion. It was just another word for being used. When you gave everything to people who gave nothing back, you were not being kind. You were teaching them that your kindness was worthless. Humans had tried for 300 years to earn the galaxy's respect through service and sacrifice. They had given their best doctors to fight alien diseases. They had sent their best engineers to fix alien problems. They had offered their best soldiers to fight alien wars, and the galaxy had taken everything they offered and asked for more. Always more, while offering nothing but contempt in return. The withdrawal was not revenge. It was simply an end to a relationship that had never been equal. Yellen finished her water and put the photograph away. Tomorrow, there would be more worlds in crisis. More species begging for help. More suffering that humans could prevent if only they chose to, but the galaxy had made its choice a long time ago. It had chosen to see humans as tools rather than partners. It had chosen to use them rather than respect them. Now humans were making their own choice. They were choosing themselves for once. Across the galaxy, other human ships maintained their silent patrols. They watched border conflicts explode into wars. They watched plagues spread through populations. They watched economies collapse and governments fall. Some of the younger crew members struggled with what they saw. They came from a culture that valued helping others above almost everything else. It went against every instinct they had to stand by and do nothing. The older crew members understood better. They remembered the years of service that had been ignored. They remembered the sacrifices that had been forgotten. They remembered the children who had died while the galaxy debated, in a small cabin on the Vigilant. Ensign Priya Sharma wrote in her personal journal. She was 23 years old and had joined the fleet because she wanted to make a difference. Now she was not sure what difference she was making. "We are watching them suffer," she wrote, "and it hurts. Every day it hurts more. But I keep asking myself, did they watch us suffer? When our people died, did they lose sleep? Did they write in their journals about how painful it was to stand by and do nothing?" She paused, her pen hovering over the page. "No, they did not even notice. They went about their lives as if our deaths meant nothing. As if we meant nothing." She wrote one more line before closing the journal. "Maybe now they will understand how it feels." The Vigilant continued its patrol. The universe continued to burn. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the galaxy was finally beginning to understand a truth that humans had known all along. Being needed was not the same as being valued. And there was nothing more dangerous than someone who had finally learned the difference. 1 year after the withdrawal, the galaxy came to Earth. They did not come as conquerors or diplomats. They came as something the galaxy had never seen before. They came as beggars. 312 ships from 37 different species gathered at the edge of the Soul Exclusion Zone. Their weapons were powered down. Their shields were lowered. Their flags and symbols of authority were removed. At the front of this strange fleet was a single Varelian vessel carrying High Minister Torvax, the same official who had laughed when Ambassador Chen walked out of the council chamber 1 year ago. He was not laughing now. His message was broadcast in every known language, sent across every frequency that humans might be monitoring. "Come not as representatives of the Galactic Council," he said. "The Council no longer exists. It fell apart 3 months ago when too many member species withdrew their support. We come as individual beings who have seen the truth too late. We were wrong. We were arrogant. We did not understand what you gave us until you stopped giving it. We are here to apologize." The message repeated for 6 hours. There was no response from Earth. On the planet below, billions of humans watched the alien fleet on their screens. Some felt satisfaction. Some felt pity. Some felt nothing at all. 300 years of hope had been crushed too. Many times for simple words to fix anything. In a small house on the coast of West Africa, Dr. Amara Ase sat with her grandson and watched the alien ships hover at the edge of their solar system. She was 92 years old. She had spent her entire life developing cures for diseases that affected species, who had never bothered to learn her name. Her grandson, a young man named Kofi, looked at her with questioning eyes. "Will we help them, grandmother?" Amara was quiet for a long time. "I do not know," she finally said. "I want to. Even after everything, I want to help them. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." She paused. But wanting to help is not enough. Not anymore. On the 7th day, Earth finally responded. The message did not come from a president or a general or any kind of political leader. It came from Amara Ase herself. The human coalition had chosen her to speak because she represented something important. She represented all the humans who had given their lives to helping others, without ever receiving recognition. Her face appeared on screens across the gathered fleet. She was small and gray-haired and looked like someone's grandmother. But her eyes held something that made even the oldest species in the galaxy pay attention. "You ask why we helped you," she began. Her voice was calm and clear. "For 300 years, you asked this question as if it was a mystery, as if there must be some hidden purpose behind our actions, some secret plan we were working toward." She shook her head slowly. There was no secret plan. There was no hidden purpose. We helped because we could not bear to see suffering and do nothing. When we saw sick children, we wanted to heal them. When we saw hungry people, we wanted to feed them. When we saw worlds in danger, we wanted to protect them. That is simply who we are. It is written into our souls. She paused, and her expression grew sadder. "But we also learned something painful during our 300 years among you. We learned that kindness without respect becomes something ugly. When you give everything to someone who gives nothing back, you are not being generous. You are being foolish. You are teaching them that your gifts have no value. The gathered aliens listened in silence. We gave you our medicine, and you took it without thanks. We gave you our engineers, and you used them without acknowledgement. We gave you our soldiers, and you let them die without mourning. We asked for nothing but respect, and you told us we had not earned it. Her voice did not rise in anger. It remained calm, almost gentle. This somehow made her words hit harder. When our children died on Kepler 4 for 2b, we begged for your help. You gave us paperwork and procedures. You gave us committees and debates. You gave us the same hollow words you are giving us now. She looked directly at High Minister Torvax. We remember those words, Minister. We remember exactly how they felt. Torvax lowered his head. He could not meet her eyes. You ask if we will forgive you? Amara continued. You ask if we will return to the way things were. The answer is no. That door is closed forever. But there is another door. A different door. And that door is not closed. She leaned forward slightly. If you want humanity's friendship, you must earn it. Not with words, but with actions. Not with promises, but with proof. You must learn to see us as equals. Not as useful tools. Not as a young species to be tolerated. As partners, as beings worthy of the same respect and dignity that you demand for yourselves. She stood up slowly, her old bones protesting the movement. We are not monsters. We do not want revenge. We do not want to see you suffer. But we also refuse to be used anymore. If you can accept that, if you can truly change, then perhaps one day we can build something new together. Something better than what came before. She looked at the screen one final time. The choice is yours. We will be watching. Transmission ended. In his ship at the edge of the exclusion zone, High Minister Torvax sat in darkness for a long time. Around him, representatives from 37 species processed what they had heard. Some were angry. Some were ashamed. Some were already thinking about how to prove themselves worthy of humanity's trust. And slowly, over the following months, ships began leaving the exclusion zone. They returned to their homeworlds carrying a message that would change everything. The galaxy had learned to take. Now it would have to learn to give. It would not be easy. Old habits do not die quickly. But the first step had been taken. And for the first time in a very long while, there was hope. 5 years had passed since the withdrawal, and the galaxy was a different place. The old Galactic Council building still stood on the neutral world of the Sara Prime. But it was empty now. Its crystal floors were dusty. Its grand chambers were silent. The flags of 200 species that had once hung from its walls had been taken down and stored away in boxes that nobody ever opened. In its place, something new had risen. The Interstellar Cooperative held its meetings on a small space station that orbited a young star at the edge of explored space. The station had no grand architecture, no ancient traditions, no hierarchy based on how long a species had existed or how many worlds they controlled. It had been built by many hands working together. Varelian engineers and Corthon construction workers and Dasari designers and human architects had created it side by side. Every corridor and every room told a story of cooperation. Ambassador Elara Chen walked through those corridors on her way to the assembly chamber. She was older now, her hair more gray than black, her steps slower than they had been. But her eyes were still sharp, and they held something that had been missing for a long time. They held peace. Beside her walked a young Varelian diplomat named Vasara. She had been named after the old homeworld that had nearly been destroyed by the Keth swarm. The world had survived, barely. Thanks to a defense force made up of dozens of species fighting together for the first time in galactic history. That battle had changed everything. It had proven that the galaxy could work together when it chose to. It had shown that mutual respect and shared sacrifice were possible. It had planted the seeds that grew into the cooperative. Are you nervous, Ambassador? The Sara asked. Elara smiled. I stopped being nervous at council meetings many years ago. This is not the council. No, Elara agreed. It is not. They entered the assembly chamber together. It was circular, with no raised platforms or special thrones. Every representative sat at the same level, around a table that had no head and no foot. The message was clear. Here, everyone was equal. Representatives from 53 species were already seated. More were joining every month. They came not because they were forced, but because they wanted to be part of something new. Something better. Alara took her seat next to representatives from species that had once laughed at humanity's applications. Some of them nodded at her with genuine respect. Others still struggled to meet her eyes, weighed down by shame they had not yet learned to release. The chairman of the session was a Korthon named Vex. He stood slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. "We are gathered today to welcome 3 new member species to the Interstellar Cooperative," he announced. "But before we proceed, there is unfinished business from our last session." He turned to look at Alara. 5 years ago, humanity withdrew from the galaxy. At the time, many of us did not understand why. Many of us were angry. Many of us believed that humans were being selfish or childish or unreasonable. The chamber was absolutely silent. "We were wrong," Vex continued. "It has taken us 5 years to truly understand what we did wrong. We took without giving. We used without acknowledging. We demanded respect while offering contempt. And when humanity finally said enough, we were shocked. We had never imagined that anyone would stop giving us what we wanted." He paused, gathering his words carefully. "The Interstellar Cooperative exists because of what we learned during those difficult years. We learned that helping each other must go both ways. We learned that every species, no matter how young or how old, has something valuable to offer. We learned that kindness is not weakness, and that accepting kindness with gratitude is not weakness either." He looked around the chamber at representatives from species that had once been enemies, that had once looked down on each other, that had once believed they were better than everyone else. "We learned humility, and that lesson came from humans." Alara stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "We never wanted to be teachers," she said. "We only wanted to be partners. We wanted to contribute. We wanted to matter. We wanted to belong." She looked at the faces around her, faces that had changed so much in 5 years. "When we withdrew, we did not do it out of cruelty. We did it because we finally understood that we could not force others to value us. That was a lesson we had to learn as well." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "But you surprised us. You did something we did not expect. You looked at yourselves honestly. You admitted your mistakes. You changed." A small smile crossed her face. "That is harder than any battle, harder than any achievement. Looking at your own failures and choosing to be better, that is the most difficult thing any being can do." She spread her hands to include everyone in the chamber. "What we have built here is not perfect. We will make mistakes. We will disappoint each other. We will fall short of our ideals. But we will do it together, as equals, as partners. And when we fall, we will help each other stand back up." She sat down. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Varelian High Minister, who had replaced Torvax, began to tap his palm against the table. The Korthon delegates joined him, then the Thesari, then every other species in the room. It was not the grand applause of political theater. It was something quieter and more genuine. It was acknowledgement. It was gratitude. It was hope. After the session ended, Alara walked alone to an observation window that looked out at the stars. She thought about all the humans who had worked and sacrificed and died trying to earn the galaxy's respect. She thought about Ambassador Chen, the first human to enter the old council chamber 300 years ago. She thought about her own younger self. Placing diplomatic credentials on a crystal floor and walking away, Thisara found her there an hour later. "Ambassador? The reception is starting." Alara nodded but did not move immediately. "I was just thinking," she said, "about how we got here, about everything that had to happen for this moment to exist." She turned to face the young Varelian diplomat. "Promise me something, Thisara. Promise me that when new species arrive, when young civilizations take their first steps into the stars, you will welcome them. You will treat them as equals from the very beginning. You will not make them prove themselves for 300 years. Itasara straightened. I promise, Ambassador. We all promise. That is the whole point of everything we have built, Ilara smiled. It was a real smile this time, full and warm. Then the universe is finally ready, she said. Let us go celebrate. They walked together toward the reception hall. Toward the noise and light and laughter of dozens of species finally learning how to be friends. Behind them, through the observation window, the stars continued to shine. The universe was vast and ancient and full of dangers. But for the first time in a very long while, it was also full of hope, and that made all the difference.